Good evening, Florida, and welcome to Coastal Conservative News, where truth has a backbone and freedom still has a home.
We're bringing you the bold stories and the real headlines and the voices that matter most, right here from the heart of the free state of Florida, from Tallahassee to the Suncoast.
We're tracking the political shifts, community victories, and constitutional battles shaping the future of our state and our great nation.
So buckle up, it's time to get informed, get fired up, and get involved.
This is CCN, Coastal Conservative News.
Good evening, Florida. I'm Allie Leger.
And I'm Michelle Posey, and this is your Coastal Conservative News Week in Review. The stories that shaped our state this week and why they matter for your family. We're going to start with a story that really should be front page news everywhere, but it barely broke through the national coverage. Florida law enforcement, alongside federal partners, rescued 43 missing children during a 2-week operation known as Operation Northern Lights. The ages ranged from toddlers to teens. 9 arrests were made, and at least 2 human trafficking cases are now under investigation.
This was a massive multi-agency rescue involving the U.S. Marshals, Homeland Security Investigations, local sheriffs, and Attorney General James Othmeier's office. Officials now confirm more than 300 children have been recovered in Florida this year through similar child recovery operations. Florida continues to lead the nation in aggressive anti-trafficking work, and these kids are now safe because of it.
Meanwhile, in South Florida, a Lauderhill shooting left 2 adults injured. 1 remains in critical condition. In Plantation, police are searching for a man who filmed a woman inside a Kohl's fitting room and then showed her the video before fleeing.
The audacity.
Throat punch anybody?
Right?
And in Broward County, an officer was struck by a vehicle during a stop. 3 suspects have been detained.
These aren't isolated incidents. They're reminders that Florida families are watching crime trends very closely, especially during the holiday travel surge.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now to a story that deserves far more attention. The University of West Florida has launched the Academy of American Civic Republicanism, funded by a $1.5 million federal grant. The goal, restore confidence in America's founding principles by teaching civics, rooted in primary documents, virtue, and responsible citizenship.
The Academy will train teachers, especially from Title I schools, host Constitution Day events, debate competitions, and reach nearly 4,500 students over the next 3 years. In a time when civic literacy is collapsing nationwide, Florida is investing in education that strengthens families, not divides them.
Meanwhile, Florida's holiday traditions are in full force. Santa made his yearly underwater dive in the Florida Keys Coral Sanctuary, a festive visual that always delights locals and visitors.
Is he a good swimmer?
It's so cool.
I don't know how he does it. And speaking of visitors, AAA reports record-breaking holiday travel, with Orlando, Tampa, Miami, and Fort Lauderdale ranking among the top national destinations. That means packed airports, heavier than usual traffic, and a big boost for Florida's tourism economy.
Plus, spotlight on Lake Worth Beach, where one of the world's largest street painting festivals is preparing for more than 600 artists this February. A true old Florida arts community that continues to grow.
Amazing.
And in our health and wellness news, we have 2 health policy bills that are now moving for session.
Yes.
A statewide ban on public smoking or vaping of marijuana, keeping parks, sidewalks, beaches, and restaurants smoke-free.
Nice. And a measure slashing medical marijuana card fees for veterans to just $15, a bipartisan nod to those who served. Moving on to our environment and wildlife, Florida's wildfire risk is rising sharply. Agriculture Commissioner Wilton Simpson warns that the state has already recorded over 3,100 fires this year, far above the usual average.
Dry conditions and forecast models point to elevated fire danger through March. The Florida Forest Service is responding with major upgrades, nearly 100 new dozers, advanced drone support, and expanded helicopter operations. Florida also continues leading the nation in responsible controlled burns, clearing roughly 2 million acres a year to reduce wildfire fuel.
Yeah, so they're basically doing what Governor Newsom out in California can't do. On the wildfire front, manatee deaths are creeping up again. While not at crisis levels seen during the seagrass die-off years, conservationists warn the water quality issues, coastal development, and red tide remain serious threats to those little mammals. We love them.
They're so cute. The Florida Panthers' hot streak came to a halt after a 6-2 loss to the St. Louis Blues. Even with the loss, the Panthers remain 7-2 in their last 9 games. Still one of the strongest teams in the league.
College football bowl season is fully underway, guys, and Florida's once again center stage with the Boca Raton Bowl, the Pop-Tarts Bowl, the Orange Bowl, and major matchups in Tampa and Miami, Ellie.
And yes, the internet is obsessed with the sprinkled helmets reveal for the Pop-Tarts Bowl. You'll see them everywhere this week, so keep your eyes out.
That's right, guys. That's your week in review. When we come back, we're taking it local. Raj Dorsami joins us for Suncoast Community with stories, people, and events from right here along the Gulf Coast.
From the heart of Marietta, Georgia, comes a tribute to the spirit of liberty. Liberty Cigars, where history meets craftsmanship. Each cigar tells a story. The Founders Collection honors the visionaries who shaped a nation. The President's House Collection celebrates the leaders who steered it. And the Naval Series salutes the heroes who defended it. Handcrafted with precision, each blend mirrors the essence of its namesake. From the boldness of George Washington to the elegance of Thomas Jefferson. Indulge in a moment of reflection. Light a Liberty cigar and savor the legacy. Discover your story at libertycigars.com because every great nation deserves a great cigar. Liberty Cigars, smoke the history. And don't forget to use promo code OPENMIC for 10% off your order.
Welcome back. Now it's time for our Suncoast Community segment with Raj Dorsami.
Thank you for watching. We have a special guest. This is a very timely guest. This is a gentleman who's actually running for governor in the state of Florida. Governor DeSantis has made quite a big, large name for himself when he did a phenomenal job of managing the COVID nonsense. He took a very strong stand, kept the state of Florida open. Then he appointed a Surgeon General, Dr. Joseph Ladapo. And most recently, he and the Surgeon General made a historic announcement. As far as we can tell, it's the first on the planet where the state of Florida now has banned any mandates for certain vaccinations. Their position is that the government cannot tell an individual what they are forced to put inside their skin or not. But the governor is terming out now. And we have several individuals that are running for that position. And we're happy to have today with us Speaker Paul Renner. How are you, sir?
Raj, great to be with you.
Thank you for being with us. Speaker Renner was a former speaker here in the state of Florida. And we're going to get right into it. We have a number of questions. This is going to be part of the CCN candidate profile where Coastal Conservative News is going to be interviewing as many candidates as possible. And Speaker Renner has not shied away, to his credit, and is more than willing to be an open book on the questions that we're going to be asking him. And so before we get into these questions, and I've got a good list here of questions, Speaker Renner, maybe you could just give an orientation to folks who don't know who you are, don't know why you're running. Maybe you can give them an idea in terms of why they should pay attention to what you are saying and what you believe in.
Yeah, thank you, Raj, for this opportunity. And look, I think you mentioned the governor's success during COVID and throughout his term. I think most Florida voters are worried about going backwards with the next governor. And they don't need to worry with me because I was part of the team and a key architect in building the free state of Florida when I was Speaker of the Florida House. And the Speaker is much like a head football coach, leading the charge on a number of agenda items. And during those 2 years, we had 2 of the most conservative and consequential legislative years in history of our state. And so we need someone who's actually a leader and who delivers results. And so I began my time in leadership in a position of trust at age 23 on the deck of the USS McInerney during Operation Desert Storm, navigating through mine-infested waters, and 20 years later, leading a team stopping foreign fighters from entering Afghanistan. So my entire life has been dedicated to positions of trust and leadership under pressure. I was also a state attorney in Broward County, defending victims and going after violent criminals. And of course, as I said, Speaker of the Florida House at the end of my tenure in the Florida House. And so we want a leader who will deliver less talk and more action. I have the results to prove it, and I'm the only candidate in the race or thinking of getting in the race that comes anywhere close to delivering that kind of forward, lean-in leadership that we've come to expect from Governor DeSantis and you'll get from Governor Renner.
Thank you for that opening of those remarks. And let's get into some specific questions. The first one here, and I'll just provide that this again will be questions that we're going to be asking all the candidates that are running for the governor position. And the first one here is, what is the proper constitutional role of a governor in defending state sovereignty against federal mandates or unconstitutional actions, sir?
Well, I believe in the 10th Amendment. And so if it's an executive order that I don't believe that has the force of law on the states, and we will act accordingly and put Florida first. That's been my motto in this campaign, is I will always put Florida first. And if I differ with the president, obviously a Democrat, I'm going to disagree a lot, but even Republicans, I will on occasion disagree. I'm going to put Florida first. And so the 10th Amendment will be alive and well in this state. And we're going to make sure that all enumerated powers not given to the federal government, which are few in number and a lot fewer than they exercise, are reserved to the states and we, the people.
Question I have is, how will you ensure state agencies remain accountable, transparent, and constrained to their lawful authority? And just to underscore this a little bit, in the last year and a half or so, there has been a move which a lot of Floridians are unhappy with, where authority, I should say, that is in the county is being actively transferred from the county to the state. One example is we have a senator who himself is a land developer who sponsored a bill that would transfer authority on what the county can say with regard to a developer's intentions. So developer comes in, the developers are good. They bring housing, they bring structure, but sometimes the developers don't always create an underlying infrastructure. They bring a big housing development. Sometimes people feel that they don't tackle the drainage from the new development in an adequate way. Sometimes they feel they don't tackle the necessary increase in transportation roads that are needed from a new development. But the point is, this particular senator sponsored a bill where the authority to reject or to question the intentions of the developer would be transferred from the county to Tallahassee, where it's feared that a well-funded developer could easily sway one or two legislators and in so doing grant blanket authority for that developer to do whatever they wanted, wherever they wanted. And so let me going back to this question with that in the background, how will you ensure state agencies remain accountable, transparent, and constrained to their lawful authority?
Well, I would start that by kind of going off the last question we talked about. Now, it's a little bit different because we're the United States of America. And of course, the states create cities and they can get rid of them, or counties for that matter. So states are, in a respect, constitutionally more powerful with respect to their subsidiary entities and counties and cities than are the states to the federal government, because the federal government comes from the states. And so let's get that clear up front. But I think what you're talking about really is applying simple, common sense reasonableness. And so developers have to be reasonable. County governments, city governments have to be reasonable in what they ask. The concern you're raising is a legitimate one, because what we don't want to do is what the federal government does to us. And with the background and the caveats I issued, the federal government took over healthcare with Obamacare. It's been a total disaster. The federal government is always looking to suck up more power and centralize power in the hands of a few, not knowing at all, or could they possibly know, what our unique state circumstances are. And in the same way, the state has to be careful not to do the same thing at the local level. And so it really just depends on what specific issue. And as they say, the devil is in the details. The state should not, though, sweep away all local control over these land use issues and make sure that local decisions that are unique are made at the local level, while also ensuring that those requirements are reasonable. We shouldn't have local governments conducting a shakedown on private property owners either. And so it really is something where I would want to look at the unique individual circumstances, but I don't believe that the solution is simply to sweep away things that have traditionally been in the hands of local government at the state level in all cases. And so we have to be very, very careful. And I do not want to see that go more in the direction it's been going just since I left the legislature in 2024.
Our next question relates to concerns that maybe became legitimate during the COVID disastrous management, especially in other states. But there were instances in our country where the governor and judges even usurped constitutional due process. They unilaterally shut citizen activity down. They changed the way the election processes work. In particular, the most vivid example of that is the unconstitutional rollout without due process by judges on how people vote by mail. So a lot of things that just went wrong during those seasons just in the last few years. So with that in mind, the next question I have is, what limits do you believe should apply to a governor's emergency powers, and how will you protect civil liberties during a crisis?
Well, thank you for that very important question. And let me begin by saying it is my belief that the COVID lockdowns were the worst infringement on civil liberties in the entire 250-year history of our country. It was outrageous what happened, with governors deeming certain people and certain activities essential and others non-essential, such as deeming casinos or abortion clinics essential, but churches and other houses of worship non-essential. And I think you can see where that went so horribly wrong. And it's the closest we've gotten to a totalitarian state in our history, and I will never, ever let that happen here in the state of Florida. It's why I support educational freedom, it's why I support health freedom, and it's why I support the necessary limits on government power up and down, from the federal government all the way down to the smallest government entity at the local level. We have to make sure that we're protecting civil liberties. We're protecting not just our constitutional liberties, but liberties that inure to us as rights given to us by God. And so I will be very strong on these issues. I do believe there needs to be some reform to your specific question on emergency powers. I had draft legislation that we had some resistance on. And even though I'll be switching hats from Speaker of the House in the legislative branch to the executive branch, does not mean that I would resist limitations on executive power. I think we have to be very, very careful with all things rolling up to the executive and asking a single individual to make those decisions. And the Federalist Papers makes very clear that power concentrated in the hands of one is the very definition of tyranny. And we cannot allow tyranny to have a grasp here in the United States. And so specifically, I think with respect to the statute, I can tell you I've given a seminar on this to the Federalist Society, that I think there's language in the emergency statute right now, which is obviously designed, if you read it, for hurricanes and this kind of thing, that could be used by a mischievous governor to claim, for example, a gun crisis or a gun violence crisis, and ban the use of, under emergency powers, the sale and possession and transport of firearms that are a individual fundamental right of every individual living in this country under the Second Amendment. As well, you could have a climate crisis declared and an emergency there, and to shut down fossil fuel plants and other necessary sources of energy that would cause prices to skyrocket and crush hardworking men and women here in this state. I will never let that happen. I will never exercise those powers. And further, I do believe that we need to have legislation to make sure that the house is built for the very worst person to occupy it. And we don't know when that may come. We hope it never comes. But our system has to be built. Our Constitution, our laws have to be built to restrain not just the best in us, but the worst in us. And we must do that at the executive branch level as well.
Speaking of that, let me turn now to parental rights, medical freedom, individual liberties, including our Second Amendment. But as context for this, I mentioned earlier in the opening remarks that the governor and Surgeon General Dr. Joseph Ladapo made a historic announcement where they made an announcement banning mandates on certain vaccines. And the question I have is this: even with that move and the overwhelming support with Floridians for what the Surgeon General did, for what the governor did, the massive machinery, the pharma massive machine is already moving quite effectively to try to mitigate that ban. Specifically, they are so well funded, they are able to pay for legislator campaigns. They're able to send money to different legislators in terms of what they're working on in their different districts. They're able to, in this way, leverage massive pressure on even good legislators, legislators that wouldn't otherwise succumb, but are feeling the weight of this almost irresistible influence. I'll just use that word to make kind. The net result is these special interests that make a lot of money from the use of pharmaceuticals, from the use of mandated vaccines, are wanting to slow down what the governor did, slow walk it, or maybe even reverse it. So the battle within our political system between what is right, what the people deserve and need, and what the special interest groups and big pharma, big business is able to do is a very real battle. And legislators find themselves in the middle trying to navigate this difficult pathway. So my question here is, what is your plan to protect parental rights, medical freedom, and individual liberties, First Amendment, our Second Amendment, at the state level?
Well, thank you for the question. And, quite simply, I've been endorsed by Stand for Health Freedom and would ensure that we protect against any form of mandates. And I mentioned COVID before, but I think it's important to first ask all the candidates, what have they done? Where have they actually led? And where have they proven that they can get results where these big special interests are working overtime to write big checks and influence members and scare them into submission? I'll point to a couple things, whether it's litigation reform and having the plaintiff's attorneys who have every other billboard on the highway and every other TV commercial, every other radio commercial, a lot of money and a lot of influence that we're writing big fat checks to make sure that we didn't get rid of our Wild West litigation regime that was driving up insurance costs. And now we've seen automobile rates coming down 15 to 20%, as well as homeowners insurance starting to stabilize. We have more work to do. As well, I fought big tech. Everyone said you're not going to beat big tech when it comes to protecting our children from addictive social media platforms. And I did it. And so they all lobbied up. They all wrote big checks, just like what you're talking about. But I was unafraid, and I am unafraid of any special interest. I will do what puts Florida first and what the needs of our citizens are first and foremost. I'm afraid of no one or anything except God Almighty. And so with that background, I will tell you that we will fight anyone who pushes back against medical freedom. And the best way to ensure that this happens, despite those monetary pressures and despite those lobbying pressures, is to elect the only governor that stands for health freedom, the only governor that stands for medical freedom to be your next governor. And when you do that, you send a very clear signal to all the politicians that it's time to row in the same direction with your governor and make sure that we put parents in the driver's seat on these issues. We should have these decisions made by parents in consultation with their pediatricians, much like we do in Denmark, or we see in Denmark, not the CDC and pediatricians. The same CDC that gave us gain of function and COVID mandates wants to recommend and have the DOH, the Department of Health here in Florida, mandate a growing number of vaccines that are really kind of out of control. And we need to make sure we have full information so that the parents can see the risks and the benefits and talk about that with their pediatrician, not have outside forces like the CDC or Big Pharma dictate to them what vaccines they will or will not take for their children. I've been a staunch defender of parental rights. I support the bill that is being run through the legislature this year to expand parental rights into this medical freedom area. I'm stunned and shocked that we have children that are sometimes taken away from their children or from their parents rather for not having a vaccination, for example, or not having a certain medical treatment that the doctor may be recommending for reasons that really don't have anything to do with that individual's medical care. And so we need to make sure that we have a regime of freedom that is for all comers and for all circumstances. And we will do that when I'm governor. And as I said, those who stand for health freedom have endorsed me. And I know that I'm the only candidate in this race who will stand for them when it comes time to pushing this legislation.
Regarding standing up for what is right, let's talk about the election process. So, in the state of Florida, there are two schools of thought. One, generally speaking, is a general agreement that Florida does quite a bit better than many other states. But yet, there are still areas in Florida regarding the election process that can and must be better. For example, there are many private companies that provide all kinds of technology and services in the election process, all the way from printing ballots to printing envelopes to distributing the envelopes and the ballots to the voter. There are private companies that are in charge of maintaining the voter rolls. This is a list of people that are authorized to vote in a particular county. Their technology is responsible for making sure that if someone dies, that person is not given another ballot. That name has to be removed. All these processes have to follow very specific state statutes that legislation passed. All these processes have to follow certain rules that the Tallahassee government has written up. And that is not always the case. For example, many of these companies don't even have to meet professional credentials. There are no state required metrics for performance on what these companies do, how they safeguard their own technology, how they make sure that public information that's entrusted with them is actually protected, standards for how that is protected, standards for what happens if that protection is breached. In the last midterm, one of the vendors, which we won't name here, statewide, their technology failed, causing websites the night of the midterms to go down in multiple counties. No action, no accountability. And there's a growing number of people, along with the President of the United States, that wants the election process to move more towards more paper, less machinery, while we have certain people in Tallahassee that are wanting increasing the number of machines. So there's a lot of tension with regard to the election process. One of the governor candidates, when asked about this, we were told, literally said, stop talking about those things. We need to unify. So this individual's method of unifying is to tell the people in that meeting to shut up and abandon their First Amendment right to question and critique government. So the question regarding, with all that in the context, the question I have is, what is your position with regard to the efforts from Floridians to create even more reform to close some of these gaps that they've identified in the election process?
Well, thanks for this question. And those who care about this issue as I do will be glad to know that before I ever got into politics, I focused on election integrity issues. I was one of the volunteers during the 2000 election, and I lived in Broward County, which was not a very pleasant place to be on my side of the aisle. And then joined the Republican National Lawyers Association, traveled to Iowa in 2002 as an election monitor to make sure there wasn't fraud or cheating or a violation of the right to vote. But let's be clear, if there's one illegal vote in any election, that is a failure. And so we have to do whatever it takes to make sure that no one can vote in our elections that is not a U.S. citizen, that is not eligible to vote, that has not otherwise been disqualified from voting. And I'm absolutely committed to that core principle. With respect to the executive order from the president, I think that's a fantastic start. I think there's a lot there that needs to be pursued at the state level, but we can also do more. And so I would just say to you that I will do whatever it takes to eliminate any chance of fraud in our elections. Absentee ballots, or those mail-in ballots as they're called, are the area that I have a lot of concern about, just because there's nobody watching, there's no monitoring as you would have when you come in person, show an ID, they can look at your ID, look at your face, run it through, hand you a ballot, receive the ballot, and we need to make sure that we have the same kind of guardrails around absentee balloting, and that absentee balloting used to be where you were physically unable to vote, or you had a good cause reason, you were going to be traveling overseas for business, or something that you could share that gave you a reason to vote by mail in that less secure fashion. So we need to think about restricting that to for cause again, I believe, but also for those that do have to vote by mail, making sure that we have sufficient guardrails to know that that ballot belongs to you. You cast the ballot, no one else did. No one intercepted the ballot or diverted the ballot or changed the ballot on its way to being counted. And then with respect to being counted, there has to be hard copy, paper ballots as the ultimate and best source, the only source really, much like an original will, to verify what that voter intended to do, that can be checked against whatever other machines are being used and the like. And so we have to prefer that method over other methods. I am sensitive to the fact that we have to count our ballots in a timely fashion, but we have to have a backstop and an ability to fully audit, not partially, but if we need to fully audit every single ballot that comes through in a hard copy form, and that those ballots are preserved for such a challenge. And we've seen, recently some allegations in Georgia about the lack of certification by people, and a violation of the law, frankly. And you alluded to this earlier in your question, is one of the huge infringements that should have been challenged was the idea that judges or anybody other than the legislature constitutionally could change election law in the middle of COVID to dramatically expand how we allow ballots to be voted and cast, and allow them to be counted in a way that is not certain to be free of fraud, and in fact oftentimes can be full of fraud. And so it was another very sad chapter in the whole COVID experience. But I can just tell you, to wrap up, long before I was in office, long before I ran for office, I cared about election integrity. And yes, we will each and every year hopefully have one more way we can tighten up those ballot requirements to make sure that every legal ballot is counted, but not a single illegal ballot is ever counted in our state. And I give you that commitment.
Let's go to the financial part of the state of Florida. So the question here is, how will you approach the state budget to ensure responsible spending, tax relief, and the elimination of waste?
Well, the nice thing and what others don't have, we got a lot of campaign conservatives out there, but not many true believers. I'm a true believer. And so I don't have to tell you I'm a fiscal conservative. I am one. And you can look at the receipts from my time as Speaker. So we obviously have a balanced budget amendment, which is a requirement. I'm glad for that because even Republicans like to spend more money than they should. And so I was glad to have that. But in addition to balancing our budget, while I was Speaker, we also gave record tax relief to Floridians in multiple forms. We also have a very small state debt. We do have a state debt, but it's very small relative to other states. And we took that debt, and of course it has a schedule of 15, 20, 30 years for repayment. We took some of those bonds that were in the form of debt and actually paid them off ahead of schedule. So let's just say with a balanced budget, record tax relief, AAA credit rating, and paying down our debt early, no one will ever confuse us for the dysfunction and irresponsibility we find in the federal government. And people can come in and say, oh, I think we should have this or that. And the question for them, if they sit in Congress, is what did you do? Did you lift a finger, or did you just miss more votes when you were supposed to be doing your job for us? What did you do to actually make those things happen? Did you continue to vote for printing and borrowing money from the Chinese Communist Party to indebt our children and our grandchildren forever, to destroy our currency, to cause inflation? And that's what we see from a dysfunctional Congress and people that go into office and care more about enriching themselves, going out and having fun, than showing up and doing their job. I'm a leader who believes in less talk and more action. And when it comes to fiscal sanity, you better believe we're going to balance our budget. You'd send every dollar that's not needed back to the taxpayers who gave it to us. It's their money, not ours. And we will continue to have Florida lead the nation. You know, we're the cheapest state government next to New Hampshire. We rank 49th out of 50th as the lowest per capita state spending in the nation, right above New Hampshire. And we're going to keep it that way, and hopefully we'll beat New Hampshire. And when I'm governor, we're going to retire that state debt. We'll do what no other state government has done, retire a state debt, and make sure that we're not only doging local governments, but doging state government. I want to find savings, but I also want to find corruption. As a former state prosecutor, I will enforce transparency and accountability wherever I find it, without regard to party. We are going to make sure that the taxpayer money is protected as sacred, and make sure that every dollar that we don't need is sent back where it belongs, to we, the people.
So, along those same lines of protecting the state of Florida, my next question is, under what circumstances should a governor deploy the National Guard or other state resources to address border security or federal failures? And part of the context for this question is currently we are enjoying a highly effective president in the White House. He has pretty much eliminated this nonsense of allowing anyone to walk into the country. But prior to that, there was really a move for states to really try and address this problem, because the White House was not. Very, very unusual. I hope this country never has to be in that situation again. But it has raised a question now for a governor candidate. And I'll repeat the question here. Under what circumstances should a governor deploy the National Guard or any other state resources to address border security or federal failures?
Well, I would call it the National Guard if I felt it was necessary, again, to protect Florida citizens. While President Trump is in office, I think we're fortunate, and I believe the Governor DeSantis has done a great job, and I will do a great job as a partner for President Trump to make sure we are removing illegal immigrants. I personally believe that we need to put a full pause on legal immigration because it's so dysfunctional. We see the abuse of whether it's H-1B visas. We see the so-called vetted Afghan who came in and murdered a National Guardsman in D.C. We see birthright citizenship, where Chinese communists are coming in purposely to give birth on U.S. soil so their children can be U.S. citizens. And we know they're not coming without the permission of the Chinese Communist Party. And so those people with U.S. citizenship can then find their way to a security clearance and placement within our nation's intelligence services and other sensitive areas, which is very concerning. We simply have a broken immigration system, as well as having totally abandoned, especially under Joe Biden, totally abandoned our duty, the president's constitutional duty to enforce the border. And so I will take this issue very seriously. I've already called for a full halt, a permanent halt, I believe, from nations who are sending people who refuse to ever assimilate into our culture. You know, the great thing about people from all walks of life, all faiths, all backgrounds, is that they've come into this country and assimilated in the sense of cherishing our First Amendment, our Second Amendment, our constitutional rights, our rule of law, our way of life. We know that in nations in Europe, there are no-go zones where it's not safe for women or girls to walk into those neighborhoods where they may be raped or murdered. And police then cannot go in and investigate or arrest their perpetrators. I will never let that happen here in the state of Florida. And so we will have a strong hand when it comes to these illegals that are setting up shop or allowing for any kind of enclave to be set up that does not and rejects, frankly, our Constitution and our way of life. And so you can count on that when I'm governor. Unfortunately, you know, one of the enumerated powers under the federal government's on the U.S. Constitution is immigration. It is uniquely a federal role. And so we can't, any more than we can print our own currency, you know, take over for the federal government and immigration. But there's a lot we can do in partnership. And if the federal government will not do its job, then I would invoke the 10th Amendment to do whatever is necessary to protect Florida citizens.
The next question I have is in fact, I'll read the question first. How will you lead a legislature that may not fully align with your agenda while ensuring the American first vision advances? And some context here is that there seems to be a growing rift. I don't know if it's really a growing rift or that's what the media is making me think it is. But there is this rift, it seems, between so-called MAGA, so-called America First, so-called conservatives. We saw a little bit of noise about this at the Turning Point conference that took place a few days ago, where we had conservative leaders literally from the stage speaking in very critical terms of each other. I've never seen that happen before. There's a move here in the state of Florida. A lot of people are noticing where the Republican Party of Florida has actually suspended Republicans from membership of the local Republican executive committees in various counties. The Republican Party of Florida has also shut down Republican executive committees in various counties, and they have their reasons for doing it. But the net result is people that have been voted into local executive committees by the people in that county have been suspended. So there seems to be tension within the conservative movement at large. And so I'll say the question here. In Florida, we have a supermajority Republicans, so I'd say supermajority conservatives, and yet this question is coming up because it's an issue here, and I'll say the question again, which is, how will you lead a legislature that may not fully align with your agenda while ensuring America First vision advances?
Well, thank you for the question. And again, I think as voters look at who to choose for their next governor, you begin with those leadership capabilities and background, and I've shared mine, anything about their past or their character that disqualifies them. And then you also get to the point of what are they setting forth as a vision? We've been very clear on a number of things, and we'll continue to lay out additional agenda items as we go forward. But I've stated clearly, and I try to always state clearly, that I'm going to govern based on principle. And those principles nicely align with an America First, Florida First agenda. That's what I believe in. I believe in governing on principle. I believe in governing based on inspiration in those principles, not intimidation of, I've got more money and you better get, right with me or else. We cannot become divided. And so, as Lincoln said, a house divided itself cannot stand. And we must make sure that we have unity. And that's what a true leader can do. President Trump brought together a lot of different groups. What you see, I think, is natural because people are looking at what comes next and various groups that don't necessarily naturally align on all issues are asserting themselves to try to claim that mantle going forward. I would just issue this caution. You know, if you've seen the movie 300 or you've looked at the 12 disciples of Jesus, whatever it is, there are stories throughout history where you see unity in small numbers. And when you're united behind principle, not transactional politics, not what's good for a particular politician or someone's political interest or self-interest, but what's good for the people, what's good for the Florida First agenda. When you unite around that, you are unstoppable. And that's why we were so successful when I was speaker. As a veteran, I believe in putting the mission first. Put the ego, put the arrogance aside, focus on the mission. And that's what I'll do with all members, whether they agree with me completely or not. But I'll make sure to, what I'm doing now is listening to what voters are telling me. Many of the topics that you're talking about are the very issues that voters are talking about right now, and none of the politicians running for office are talking about. I have a vision. I've stated very clearly today and will in the coming months where I stand on these issues. And we want someone who will talk less and give more action, someone who will actually stand behind a vision and not simply run as a campaign conservative. We want a true believer, and the voters, and I know your listeners are smart enough to know the difference. And because of that, I'm confident once all the information is laid out, we're going to be victorious next August.
Well, Speaker Renner, thank you for with us. I want to let the audience know that Speaker Renner on his office did not decline any of the questions that we wanted to ask. They were very fully open to anything that we want to talk about. And Speaker Renner, you have actually recently been endorsed by a number of organizations. This is quite early in the race that you've done that. You want to comment on who's endorsed you, and also for those who want to learn a little bit about your background, what the website would they go to, Speaker?
Well, the best way is to go to the website, and we'll have all those posted, if not on the website, certainly through social media. And I'm grateful to really have the endorsement of those that believe in the cause of freedom, those who are among the, as I said, true believers, not campaign conservatives, not, but the real deal are endorsing our campaign one by one in county after county. And I'm very encouraged by that because they see the difference. And so you can go to voterenner.com, VOTERENNER, voterenner.com. You can see an introductory video that tells a little bit about my background and what I did while I was speaker. You can see some of the agenda items we've already rolled out. We will continue to roll more out in the future, but we have our Florida First affordability agenda. We have our our agenda for health, freedom, and wellness, that initiative, as well as our plan to roll back property taxes. And so for those that might be confused about what I'm calling for, all the proposals in the legislature today, as well as the governor's proposal to potentially remove homestead property taxes, have to go to the ballot next November. They have to get to 60%. If they fail to reach that number, we have to wait until 2028 for another crack at it. There's only one way under the Constitution with a supermajority vote, which we have now, to roll back property taxes legislatively. And so I called for a rollback to 2024 levels so that everyone gets a tax break and no one gets a tax increase. Why is this important? Is because in 2025, while we've been talking about property taxes, our rates all went up. Now in January 1, we're about to hit the new year, we're going to see our property taxes go up yet again. So this is a necessary first step. And people ask, well, are you saying do this instead of anything else? No. Let's do this right now so no one gets a tax increase. Everyone gets
Persian Gulf,
a material tax decrease. And then we can continue to have the conversation about broader property tax reform. This can be done right now in a matter of 2 days. I know I was the speaker. This is not a big, beautiful bill. This is a 2 or 3 page bill that can be done in short order. It's time for the legislature to act. Again, we need less talk, more action. People are struggling with affordability on insurance, on property taxes, on health care. I will do something about it when I'm governor.
Thank you, Speaker Renner. We're talking to Speaker Renner, who is running for the governor of the state of Florida. We appreciate your time and look forward to having you again on our show soon. Thank you, sir.
Great to be with you, Raj.
Thank you, Raj, for that wonderful reporting there. We really appreciate all the hard work you do. All right, you guys, stay with us. Political Pulse is coming right up after this.
They call masculinity toxic, but the truth is, God calls it sacred. My name is Camden Bettinghouse, and I've seen how the world takes what God meant for us as men and turn it into this thing called toxic masculinity. I wrote Fearless Masculinity because my generation's been lied to. We've been told to sit down, stay quiet, and apologize for being men. This world doesn't need weaker men. It needs men who are willing to stand up and become fearless. Men who protect their families, serve their communities, and live without fear. Fearless Masculinity is a roadmap to discover who God truly made you to be as a man. It's about rediscovering purpose, building courage, and stepping into who God truly calls you to be. If you're tired of being called toxic just for being a man, and you're tired of shrinking back, tired of silence, this book is for you. Are you ready to step up? If you are, go to CamdenBettinghouse.com to get more information and become a fearless man of God.
Again, Florida. I'm Allie.
And I'm Michelle. Welcome to Political Pulse.
Let's get right into it. We began with a major move from Governor Ron DeSantis that is already triggering national debate. DeSantis issued Executive Order 25244, designating the Muslim Brotherhood and CAIR, CAIR, the Council on American Islamic Relations, as foreign terrorist organizations under Florida law. The order bans state agencies from contracting with or funding anyone tied to those groups.
Yeah, that's right. CAIR has filed a federal lawsuit arguing only the federal government can designate foreign terror groups and claiming retaliation for their advocacy work. They're asking the courts to strike down the order. Supporters say Florida's taking a strong stance against extremism. Critics warn of First Amendment implications. This case will move quickly, and to be honest, our federal government is following suit as well, so we'll see where this goes.
Absolutely. Also this week, the governor unveiled a $117 billion Florida First budget. It's amazing. Big items include record teacher pay investments, major funding for law enforcement, corrections officers, National Guard readiness, and campus security, $1.6 billion for Everglades and environmental restoration, and targeted property tax relief.
Yes, DeSantis also announced $34 million for storm recovery and water infrastructure upgrades across Okeechobee and the Treasure Coast, an important boost for rural and inland communities.
And one more major headline, Florida Supreme Court Justice Charles Kennedy is stepping down, giving the governor another appointment to what is already one of the most conservative high courts in America.
Probably why everybody wants to live in Florida. Now, Attorney General James Othmeyer is staying busy. We already reported. If I see him in a red suit, I'm gonna think he's Santa, because he moves quick too.
He's so busy.
We already reported on Operation Northern Lights, where 43 missing children were rescued, but there are two more Attorney General actions this week worth noting.
First, Othmeyer's Office of Statewide Prosecution charged an Oxford man with 14 felonies for possessing child abuse and animal abuse material on Snapchat. Investigators say a cyber tip led to evidence depicting minors and animals being exploited.
Yikes.
Othmeyer vowed his prosecutors would pursue the maximum possible sentence.
Good. And in Fort Myers, the AG secured a conviction against a Cuban national who entered the country unlawfully and then stole hurricane relief trailers intended for families recovering from Hurricane Ian. Prosecutors say he resold them for profit, a case that ties border enforcement directly to Florida disaster relief. We're so much different than Minnesota. We see people committing fraud and do something about it, unlike Tim Walz.
So who's stealing what from who?
Yeah, exactly.
The Florida Supreme Court handed down a major decision. It upheld the state's 8-4 death penalty law, ruling that unanimous juries are not required. Florida now has the lowest threshold in the nation for imposing capital punishment.
Now, supporters say change was necessary after the Parkland shooter avoided the death penalty because 3 jurors voted against it. Critics, including national civil rights groups, argue Florida is increasing the risk of wrongful executions. The decision will shape Florida criminal justice for decades.
Meanwhile, in the legislature, lawmakers are reviving the Rural Renaissance Package, a multi-bill effort to rebuild healthcare, schools, and economic development in Florida's small counties.
Yeah, and at the federal court level, the battle over Florida's school book removal law continues. A district judge called parts of the law overbroad, but 21 Republican attorney generals have now filed in support of Florida's appeal, arguing states have broad authority over school content. I mean, that should be
that's how
pretty.
It works.
This is shaping up to be a defining case for parental rights nationwide.
Also developing lawsuits against Florida's state-run immigration detention center nicknamed Alligator Alcatraz. Attorneys claim detainees struggle to access legal counsel and want a federal judge to personally inspect the facility. Florida argues the court doesn't have the jurisdiction.
And when you're here illegally, you do not get due process.
Exactly.
I mean, but moving on to education, guys, Florida's education debates remain in full swing. The State Board of Education's new anti-communism curriculum, inspired by the Heritage Foundation's Phoenix Declaration, is drawing national attention. Students will study the death tolls and human rights abuses of communist regimes alongside primary source civics instruction.
This is amazing. Opponents call it politicized. Which,
right.
What? Okay. Supporters say it's long overdue, especially given record low civic literacy among young Americans. Florida is again setting the national pace on curriculum reform, and we are here
if
for it.
you've got to call learning the pitfalls of communism politicizing, tell me you're on the wrong side of most arguments. That's crazy. A major transparency and content oversight case is also underway, guys, tied to the book removal law. The 11th Circuit will now decide how far states can go in restricting materials they deem pornographic or age inappropriate. I mean, we already have state law that says if it's harmful to minors, get it out. So I don't know why we're not doing this.
I mean, the FCC is very clear.
Yeah.
Anyway, in accountability news,
Yes.
the CFO, Blaise Ingoglia, and the Department of Government Efficiency has intensifying audits across the nation.
Yeah.
Well, not the nation, the state. Good,
Yes.
cool. I wish they would do it across the nation. It'd be great.
Follow Florida's lead.
Right. Doge's letters to multiple jurisdictions warn against delaying or obstructing audits, and new legislation would penalize local governments that overspend or hike taxes beyond certain thresholds.
Yeah, this follows a Hillsborough County audit claiming nearly $279 million in overspending. A number county officials strongly dispute. Whether you love it or you hate it, Doge is reshaping how Florida handles oversight of counties, cities, and school districts.
Absolutely. And in Miami, the planned land transfer for a Trump presidential library has been temporarily blocked by a judge while a Sunshine lawsuit proceeds. Critics argue the original vote was rushed with insufficient public notice. The College Board re-voted, but the court froze the transfer until transparency questions are resolved.
Yeah, an important reminder, open government is not optional in Florida. Even high-profile projects must follow the rules. I think this is Trump derangement syndrome probably just playing out here locally. That's crazy.
I agree with you. Well, you guys, that's it for our Political Pulse.
Yes, when we come back, Camden Bettinghouse brings us Cam in the Moment. You won't want to miss it. Stay tuned.
Hi.
Hello, how are you?
We are here to get an IV.
An IV. I heard you have an IV room?
Yeah, absolutely. You just head right back this way.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Knock, knock. Hello. Hi, I'm Michelle.
I'm Sarah.
Sarah, this
Hi,
is Al.
Allie. Nice to see you.
How can I help you?
We're stressed. We're moms. We've got multitasking going on. I feel like I fall victim to like a brain fog a little bit. I don't know if that's my age or whatnot.
You need a little bit of clarity, a little bit of energy.
Yep.
Right?
Is there of an IV that you would recommend for that? Thank you.
We call this the brainstorm.
The brainstorm.
The brainstorm.
Come visit We the People Health and Wellness Center,
where medical freedom exists.
Welcome to Cam in the Moments. I'm Cam, and here are your week's biggest moments coming up. All right, guys, welcome back to Cam in the Moment here on Coastal Conservative News. Happy holidays and Merry Christmas. I know we just had Christmas yesterday, and New Year's is coming up. It's a chaotic holiday season, celebrating the greatest news of all time, the birth of Jesus, and also getting ready for the new year. It's so much going on, but we still got to give you your news. You know, we still got to cover what's going on here in the great state of Florida and in the United States and everything going on around the world. But today we're going to be talking about what DeSantis is doing, because Governor DeSantis is always doing something. And I'm just so grateful we've had such a great governor here in Florida for the past, 8 years. And it's going to be really sad to see him go. So we want to cover everything he's doing, because from here on out, what he does is very meaningful, because he knows this is his last chance to really make a change and a permanent change in Florida for the better. And I think he really has our best interests at heart as a state. And what he just did the other day was DeSantis designated Muslim Brotherhood and CAIR terrorist organizations. Now, this is big. This is new. This is something that we haven't seen. We actually saw something like this in Texas happen, but Florida, this is the first time we've seen anything. But here's a quote. It says, "The Muslim Brotherhood's Islamist ideology irreconcilable with foundational American principles of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness reflected in the United States Declaration of Independence and in the Constitution, especially including the right to religious freedom and the equal protection of the laws, as the executive order states." And that's what was in the executive order about the designation of these as terrorist organizations. But what does that even mean? Well, I actually have it right here. We can dig into all these details, and probably more than we can find right now, but it orders all state agencies, law enforcement, education, and public finance to deny any privilege, contract, grant, or even simple room rental to anyone providing material support, donations, dues, lodging, communications to the Muslim Brotherhood or CAIR. It creates a registry of affiliates transmitted to the Department of Homeland Security, and it purports to align Florida law with Section 219 of the Immigration and Nationality Act. So basically, a lot of stuff going on here. What it's doing at the very heart of it is trying to protect American citizens from being under the horrible rule of things like Sharia law and things that come from Islam, which, by the way, in America, you have the freedom of religion. You have the freedom to exercise your religion, but you don't have the freedom to harm anyone else or take their rights away. And that is what is at the root of some of this stuff that we don't necessarily see on the surface. But DeSantis said that they are suing him for this. the CAIR and Muslim Brotherhood are actually suing him for making this executive order. But what he said is the lawsuit will give the state discovery rights to the organization's bank records and other information, which is a good thing, because then they have every right. They have all the information. But here's the quote from DeSantis directly, so watch this clip.
Designation for both the Muslim Brotherhood and CAIR. This is something that has been a long time coming. I know the federal government's now working in a similar direction. I think you're going to see statutory codification of how we handle different terror designations. But I welcome the lawsuit, because what will happen is that will give the state of Florida discovery rights to be able to subpoena the bank records, to be able to do that. And honestly, it'd give us even more reason, I believe.
Yeah, I think it's kind of funny that they're suing, because he says they have every right to sue, and then we're going to have a right to get the information. We need to make sure that nothing is going on here to protect Floridians, and that's really what this is about. And I'm grateful. We should all be grateful for a governor who wants to protect us here in Florida from stuff like this. I don't know if you guys saw what happened in Australia a few weeks ago, and I know we didn't cover it here on my segment, but there was a horrible massacre at a Jewish Hanukkah event by radical Islamist terrorists that this kind of ideology stems from. And things like that are what we want to prevent here. It's a horrible tragedy, but it's such a wake-up call for all Americans who are going, wait, we can't just let anyone in this country with any ideology that isn't compatible with our country, our constitution, our way of living, just come in and start to redefine how things work and end up doing things like this. And I'm not saying every Muslim is like this. I love Muslims as people. Islam as a thing is an entirely different thing as an individual. And so that's where the difference is. We got to make sure we're not hopping on that, and we got to make sure there's a fine line. But DeSantis is also publicly opposed Sharia law and is in favor of a nationwide ban. I don't know if you guys know what Sharia law is, but a lot of things that restrict freedom, especially with women. I mean, they are mandated to wear head coverings, everyone's mandated prayer. It's all this stuff that's not about freedom at all. And we should be opposed to that. I don't even know how that's even a question. The United States isn't compatible with that kind of structure. We have our own legal system here. So we don't want to get into that stuff. But DeSantis is not the only one who's working on this issue, as the Attorney General of Florida, James Othmeyer, has recently pushed back on public funding for Islamic schools in Florida. As there's two different schools that are going on with this. Hifz Academy, Hifz, and Bayan Academy have brought in $15,700,000 and $2,600,000 respectively in voucher funds over the past decade. And this is what Attorney Othmeyer says. He says Sharia law seeks to destroy and supplant the pillars of our Republican form of government and is incompatible with the Western tradition. The use of taxpayer-funded school vouchers to promote Sharia law likely contravenes Florida law and undermines our national security. So, bang, that's a big statement right there. He's saying, no, we're not going to have anything to do with that here. We have our own laws, and the funding that goes to these schools that promote Sharia law actually go against our whole country. So why are we going to fund them with federal money, with taxpayer dollars, to promote an ideology that would destroy our country? It's so hypocritical and upside down. And we have got to stop this infiltration of the ideology coming in before it takes over. Because Islam does not assimilate. Islam takes over. Islam destroys. It dominates. It just takes over. And if we want to protect our Christian values of this country, which America is a Christian nation, if you go back to the founding and all the documents, and if you look at the Declaration of Independence, and if you look at the swearing in of elected officials all over, there's so many things that point to how we are a Christian nation. And this kind of ideology is very dangerous to something like America. And so we need to get to the bottom of it. And I'm glad that our state is taking action, and a state like Texas as well. But also, our own government right now is aware of this issue, and they are actually in on this. They're in on preventing something like this from taking over. Tulsi Gabbard at America Fest, she's the director of national intelligence for America right now. And at America Fest, the Turning Point event that happens all the time in Phoenix, she had a statement about Sharia law and Islam. So take a look at this.
To implement in their own governments these Islamic principles that are forced on people through the use of laws or violence. The bottom line is this: when we talk about the threat of Islamism, this political ideology, there is no such thing as individual freedom or liberty. As Charlie said over and over again, it is fundamentally incompatible with our nation's foundation of freedom.
Wow, that's powerful. That is direct. And if I'm looking at this from an American citizen point of view, that is the kind of leadership I want to protect American citizens first. Because that's the number one job of someone like that, is to make sure we are protected here in our own country. And there is a threat here, and a lot of people are not recognizing that threat. A lot of people are kind of just being like, "Oh, it's fine. It's just the way they want to believe, what they want to believe. We're not going to force anything." But they are the ones forcing things, and so we do have to make sure we're on top of this. And that's exactly what our leaders are doing. And if you're in Florida right now, I'm sure you're happy because you're protected. You have people that care about this, that want to protect you and make sure that you have your freedoms and you keep your freedoms. And that's how we all should be. So thank you so much to James Boothmeyer, Attorney General, and Governor Ron DeSantis for standing up for Floridians. And I hope to see more and more elected officials come out and condone this, condemn it, and also make sure they bring it to light, because as Christians, our number one thing is we're supposed to expose evil, bring it to light, promote the freedom and freedom of Christ. That's what it's about. There's nothing like the freedom of Christ. Freedom is a biblical principle in the very root of it all. So I could go on and on about that. That's for another time, another segment. But thank you so much for coming to this one. Our wholesome moment of the week, of course, goes to New Year's coming up in just a few days here. Have a great, fantastic New Year. New Year's, I just love it. I love January because it's a fresh start. If you had a hard year, if you had a hard time in the last few months, January is coming. And life is all about seasons. You're going to go through seasons of good and bad. And every time you get back to January, you're like, you know what? I can restart. I can start fresh. I can get back on my goals, and I can start to live the way I want to live. So that's the wholesome moment of the week. I hope you guys have some goals planned out. I know I'm getting mine together, and maybe I'll talk about them next time we're here next week. But thank you so much for tuning in. If you like what you saw, click that follow button for us on Coastal Conservative News, and let me know if you want to hear from me. Reach out to @CamdenTreyB on all social media platforms, and I'll see you next week on Cam in a moment.
Thank you, Camden, for your wonderful reporting and for shining a light, as you always do with your segment.
And as we close out tonight, we shift from the noise of the moment to what grounds us beyond the headlines and politics.
That's right, Allie. After the break, Kevin Gamble joins us with Faith in Focus. Don't go anywhere, guys. We'll be right back with more CCN.
They've censored the truth, manipulated the narrative, and told you to sit down and shut up.
But not here. Not on our mic.
Open Mic with Allie and Michelle is the podcast where free speech lives, patriotism thrives, and the truth doesn't whisper, it roars.
That's right. We break down the stories the media buries, the policies that threaten your freedom, and the culture chaos Gen Z is waking up to literally every day.
From whistleblower exposés and global conflicts to the spiritual war on masculinity, we don't just talk about it, we say what they won't.
That's right. If you're tired of soft takes, scripted spin, and really plastic politics, it's time to tune in and turn up.
Because this mic is always open.
Hello and welcome to Faith in Focus. Today we're tackling one of the toughest challenges in theology. Why does God allow evil, pain, and suffering in the world? This is the classic problem of evil, and it's tripped up believers and skeptics alike for centuries. Let's break down the problem of evil in a way that's both logical and compassionate, showing how Christian theism not only withstands this objection, but offers real hope. Let's get into it. First off, let's acknowledge the weight of this question. When we see headlines about natural disasters wiping out communities, innocent children suffering from disease, or horrific acts of violence, it's natural to wonder, if God is all-powerful, all-knowing, and all-good, why doesn't He step in and stop it? This is one of the greatest obstacles for belief in God. We can ponder the death of suffering from man's inhumanity to man, like wars, genocide, and natural evils like earthquakes and famines. But we should caution against jumping to atheism too quickly. Maybe, just maybe, there's a bigger picture we're missing. We can start by drawing a key distinction: the intellectual problem of evil versus the emotional one. The emotional problem is about our gut-level dislike of a God who permits suffering. It's personal, it's raw, it hits us in moments of grief. We'll touch on that later, but first let's tackle the intellectual side, which asks how God and evil can logically coexist. On the intellectual front, there are two versions: the logical problem and the probabilistic one. The logical problem claims it's impossible for God and evil to both exist. If God is omnipotent and good, He'd eliminate evil, right? So if evil exists, God must not. But there's no explicit contradiction here. The atheist has to assume hidden premises, like God can't have any good reasons for allowing evil. But no one's proven those premises. In fact, we can flip it. As long as it's even possible, God has morally sufficient reasons for permitting evil, reasons we might not see. It shows God and evil are logically compatible, and today most philosophers agree. The logical problem has been dissolved. Evil doesn't disprove God outright. Now the tougher nut is the probabilistic problem. Here, the argument is that while God and evil could coexist, it's highly improbable given the sheer amount of suffering. Why would a good God allow so much seemingly pointless pain? We will respond with 3 main points. First, we're simply not in a good position to judge the probabilities. As finite human beings, we're limited to time, space, and insight. God, being transcendent, sees the entire tapestry of history. What looks pointless to us might be part of a greater good that ripples out over centuries. Let's use an analogy from the chaos theory. A butterfly flapping its wings in Africa could trigger a hurricane in the Atlantic. Similarly, a single act of suffering, like a brutal murder of an innocent person or a child's leukemia, could set off historical chains leading to immense good down the line. We can't predict or assess that from our vantage point, so speculating that God lacks reasons is presumptuous. It's like judging a novel after reading 1 page. Second, the core Christian doctrines actually make the coexistence of God and evil more probable, not less. These aren't just add-ons, they're central to the faith and shift how we see suffering. For starters, the chief purpose of life isn't earthly happiness, it's knowing God. We often assume God should make this world a comfy paradise, like we're His pets. But Christianity says no. Our ultimate goal is relationship with God, which brings true fulfillment. Many evils might seem pointless for happiness, but they could serve the greater good of drawing people to God. Suffering can foster deeper trust, dependency, and faith. It's not that God causes evil, but He can use it redemptively if we respond well, turning to Him instead of away in bitterness. Next, humanity is in rebellion against God. We're not innocent victims in a broken system. The Bible teaches we're alienated by our own choices, morally guilty and prone to depravity. Moral evils like murder, oppression, and war stem from human free will. God doesn't micromanage to stop every bad decision. He lets sin run its course to highlight our need for forgiveness and redemption. We should note that the Christian isn't surprised by evil. We expect it in a fallen world. This rebellion explains much of the pain we inflict on each other. Then there's the promise of eternal life. This world isn't all there is. For those who trust in Christ, suffering here is temporary, preparing us for an eternal weight of glory that's beyond comparison. The Apostle Paul from 2 Corinthians states, "Our slight momentary affliction pales next to heavenly joy." The longer eternity stretches, the more this life's pains shrinks to nothing. God will reward faithfulness amid trials with unspeakable bliss. Finally, knowing God Himself is an incommensurable good, the ultimate fulfillment. No matter the suffering, the person who knows God can still say, God is good to me, because that relationship outweighs everything. It's like comparing finite pain to infinite love and goodness. The third point is that when you weigh the full evidence, God's existence becomes probable, even with evil in the mix. Evil alone might make God seem unlikely, but factor in the bigger picture. The universe's existence from nothing points to a creator. The fine-tuning of physical constants for life suggests intelligent design. And objective moral values, our sense that evil is truly wrong, actually argue for God as the ground of goodness. Atheism struggles to explain these while Christianity embraces them. Now, shifting to the emotional problem. This is where suffering hits home. We should acknowledge it's not about logic, but healing the heart. Here, Christianity shines with the cross. God isn't distant. He entered our suffering in Jesus, who endured ultimate evil and pain. Through Christ's death and resurrection, God defeats evil, offers forgiveness, and promises to wipe away every tear. Suffering isn't meaningless, it's part of a story leading to redemption. Christian theism is our last best hope for solving the problem of evil because it doesn't just explain it, it transforms. Friends, if you're wrestling with this today, know you're not alone. Turn to God in your pain, seek Him through prayer, scripture, and community. And I also want to remind you that faith isn't blind, it's reasoned hope amid the storm. That's all for now for this episode of Faith in Focus. If this resonated, share it with someone who needs it. Until next time, keep the faith. God bless.
Thank you, Kevin, for offering a reasoned defense of Christian theism while providing compassionate hope through the transformative power of the cross. I mean, what are we celebrating? during these times, right?
Remember, if there's a story happening in your county, your school board, your city council, or your neighborhood, we want to hear from you. Visit us at coastalconservativenews.com or call our tip line, 941-487-7441, to share your tips and stories.
That's right, guys. Stay informed, stay engaged, and stay Florida strong.
I'm Allie Lachey.
And I'm Michelle Posey.
And this is Coastal Conservative News.
Good night, and God bless the free state of Florida.